Reverend Emmanuel S. McIntyre is an award-winning playwright, developing scholarship, birthing crafts, and curating spaces for individuals and groups to deepen their creative faith journeys. She's an Atlanta native. She received her BA from Colby College, MA from Indiana University, MFA from Spalding University, and Masters of Theology Studies from Emory University. Most recently, she received commissions to write for theaters and companies such as Actors Express, Oakland Cemetery, Out of Hand, Odyssey Impact, and she is an elder in full connection in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. 2016 to 2021, president of the Connectional Young Adult Ministry. She probably made history because of the pandemic. She served 5 years instead of 4. She's currently a PhD student in religion at Vanderbilt University. And her life's work is to develop spaces for artists, ministers, and scholars to rest and restore, to be better equipped to help the community. I would, in addition to what you see or what I have said about our next presenter, she is one among, I think, which might be many, as we move forward in our church, who answers the call to the preaching ministry. But yet, she may not feel she's called to pastor. That was, and as the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, I think we have to be broad enough and big enough to accommodate the gifts and graces of all of those whom God calls. And I think the General Conference took a step in that direction at the last General Conference. She has proven herself to be committed to the church, committed to the work. And I appreciate the tenacity that she has. And we thought it would be good for us to come as one of those that we call young, gifted, saved, and CME, because she could take her talents other places. So we're glad that the Connection of Young Adult President, in the presence of Reverend Romina McIntyre, will come to us for our next presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I'm so honored to be here today. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. I first just want to say thank you all for the opportunity. And of course, I want to make sure I recognize Bishop Thomas L. Brown, who is my bishop and my bishop, because he's the bishop of the Department of Christian Education, as well as the 6th Episcopal District, Dr. Carmichael Crutchfield, Ms. Amisha Walker Harrison, and my entire board for all the work that they've done. And I fortunately didn't have to serve by myself this 5th year. I had an awesome board who was willing to continue to do the work that they do. This particular conversation that we will play in just a second is pre-recorded. Dr. Harris and I were having a conversation about what's going to happen after the pandemic and when the pandemic ends, and what life has looked like, especially as persons who typically travel quite a bit. during the year and how things have changed. And we started talking about the fact that when things kind of turn back to whatever normal is, we're going to find that some people really liked the way that life was during the pandemic. And so we conceived of this conversation, Navigating the New Normal, to kind of talk about where we are, what we're thinking about, and some things to kind of put forward as we start to move toward the end of the pandemic and what that might look like, and what the community might demand of us as we start to move forward. And so I encourage you all to please go ahead as you're watching the pre-recorded PowerPoint. The PowerPoint will be available as a handout for you on the back end. It's actually an enhanced PowerPoint over the one that I recorded. But as we are watching, if you have any questions, please start to go ahead and drop them in the chat box. And we can make sure to have a full conversation on the back end once the presentation is done. So at this point, if we can go ahead and play the video of the PowerPoint. Introduction. We're going to talk about the pandemic. We'll talk about what we believe. We'll talk about what we'll find. Some amplified concerns, what's next, and some resources. So for those of you who kind of need an outline to kind of follow along, this is kind of where we're going here. First things first, introduction. Yeah, so I'm kind of at a place where we're kind of going up and down at the same time, especially thinking about what this normal looks like and what a new normal is. So for us, what is going on here with the pandemic? Things have changed for us. The church is now online and a hybrid. School is online and a hybrid. Family life, there have been marriages, divorces, domestic situations have changed for so many people. Mental health, the scale goes up and down for a lot of us. A lot of us are probably weighing ourselves and wondering, what in the world do we do? And some of us have probably been sitting at their computer for so long that we really, even at this moment, need to probably be stretching, because we haven't had a really good stretch in a while. I know even for myself, I bought a new yoga mat, and I haven't done yoga in probably about 5 to 7 years. And I told myself that I've got to get myself, because I sit at the computer for so long and my body is in this one position for so long, that I have to really kind of stretch it out and do some other work with it. And see, because of the pandemic, we assume that once everything is done, everything will be magically fixed. Yeah. So everyone thinks they will magically be fixed. We assume that everyone hates Zoom meetings or online classes, and we assume that things will go back to normal. As I mentioned before, there is no new normal, at least not as we know it. And that's something that we really kind of think about and want to consider here today, because this idea of getting it fixed in our head that once this stops, things will just go back to what it was is kind of a myth. To go back and say that we've gone back to what it was means that this entire last year has not happened. And that's not true for so many of us. Our lives have significantly changed in this process because things have shifted and changed in the last year. So what we're going to find, though, is, and this is what I do want to talk about in this idea of what has shifted and changed, is that some students are doing better online than in physical school. Many were already working from home and may actually prefer it. So some may not prefer it now, but there we will find that some people actually prefer working online, at home, or at least will prefer working at home when this is all over. Some prefer the hybrid of going to church online and may be more convenient or works better for their experiences. So in some churches, this is the most attention that we've paid to the sick and shut-in, or persons with various equity issues and various abilities now because we have to. Can you imagine that all of a sudden there are some church members who may no longer be a member of what is considered maybe like a forgotten class of people, because not every church really caters to their sick and shut-in, and not every church caters to persons who may not be able to get to church at any given time. And can you imagine that maybe, just maybe for them, they've seen more church members or heard from more church members in the past year because we've been paying more attention to them. And also it's good to think too that for some churches right now, some people don't even realize that as we've been online and been doing things, that we have lost members and we don't even know it yet, because these persons were probably already on the way out, or something happened in the online church where they found something different that really fulfilled their needs
in the church. They probably found that they didn't really particularly worry about politics of the church, and they really just kind of came to worship, or they wanted to shift their focus because that's how things are. And I think that's really important for us to really consider and think about exactly how that works, and the fact that we will find that some people really like it. I have, for example, a god sister of mine, her child who has had disability issues. I mean, just not disability issues, but just had socialization issues just from their upbringing. They were having such a hard time with working with and facilitating some schooling and helping him to get focused for in-person school. As soon as the pandemic happened, his shot up and had like straight A's. And so this is someone who went from being like a D student who being online actually shot up to being an A student because of the work and the different kinds of community, and the fact that for him learning looked a lot different. And as I mentioned again, people are already working from home. And so there are a lot of people that they're finding that not everybody has to always be in the office every single day for everything to work. I mean, sure, there might be some accountability, but I do suspect that a lot of people are going to ask for more hybrid time in the office and out of the office once things are all over. And I think that's really important. And there are going to be people who are going to want to stay online. And I think that's the most important for what we're doing right now, is understanding that people are going to want to possibly stay online in online worship, because that's kind of where they are at the moment, and that for them, this just works. And so we have to be willing to honor the fact that this might just work for some people. So some of the other amplified concerns that have come from the pandemic, lower membership. Some people are worried about lower giving. The church is no longer being what Du Bois calls the social center of the Black community. And I think that's super important for us to really think about, is that Du Bois talking about how at one point, especially in the turn of the early 1900s, at the turn of the 20th century, the only place that persons of African Americans could go was to church. To do all their things where they would not face the majority of discrimination. So they could have their birthday parties at the church. They would do a lot of different things at the church. Tutoring was at the church. Middle of the week, school was at the church, which is how a lot of our churches didn't have to worry about paying for their taxes, because their churches doubled as a school. And so when you think about those particular elements it's very clear that the church's intent at one point was very different than what we're doing. And so some people are really recognizing that, people aren't in church as much, or people aren't here as much, or people aren't doing what they're doing because of that. Also, some people are having concerns about spiritual survival. Can the church continue to support themselves spiritually? We'll be able to continue to answer and talk to all the different people around our spiritual growth? And is there a way that we can really kind of think about how the word might work differently for us? And also, too, this is also a time where in these moments that the traditions may not all be able to be upheld. So what do I mean by that? Yes, having the Bible is super important as a foundation. Yes, thinking about the ways that the polity of our church works, but let's reimagine what both of them look like. Let's reimagine what it looks like to tell the Bible stories to tell the Bible stories in a different way that still honors the truth of what was there, but is being relevant to what we're doing. Let's honor the polity of our church that says, hey, these are some things that are grounding. However, this is the work that needs to be done, and this is how we can do things. And these are the traditions that can be, even if there are traditions that can be upheld, maybe these are some traditions that maybe need to be reworked a little bit and reconsidered, so that it actually works for the people even who came up in the tradition, who are like, oh, this tradition is old, and maybe perhaps we should rethink it a little bit so that we can all have fresh eyes on it. So those are some of the amplified concerns, but we'll talk about that in a second. Because the biggest question that we all have at this point is, what do we do? We have all these concerns. We have a pandemic that is coming to an end and seemingly rapidly. There's all these things that are happening. What do we do? Well, what we'll end up doing is, I have a couple of ideas of how we can kind of approach changing our mindset and rethinking what we do in order to move forward in what we will be calling the new normal, and how we can kind of amplify the work that we're doing, how we can move forward, how we can ourselves kind of cater to the needs of the generations, and how even our own bodies are currently changing, because we're not the same people that we were before the pandemic. And as we move forward, we will find that there are needs and things that we particularly like as well. First thing that I suggest that we do is assess what's needed. What do I mean by that? Find out who the groups are in the church. Maybe you haven't paid attention to the groups lately, but here's some basic ones. And if you read Dr. Crutchfield's book, The Formation of People, Christian Education in African American Church, he talks about some of the groups that you also have to make sure that you consider while you're in the church, and how you help to form each of those groups. Some of those groups are children, youth, young adults, adults, and seniors. And I broke this up specifically by age group, but it doesn't mean that you have to stay with age group. Do you have mostly singles? Do you have mostly married couples? Do you have married couples with children? Do you have single persons with children? What do you have in all of your groups, and what kind of groups are in the church that might need some sort of nurturing, or might need some sort of way of understanding how this works for them? And also find out, once you have identified those groups, find out what they need. What is it that they're in need of? What is it that they might help them right now? Like, do they need someone to help them as they consider how going back to school? Do they need someone to be able to help them in case their school decides to do a hybrid thing? Because to be honest, I 100% can't say that all of the students, even if once the pandemic is over, that every single school is gonna go back to being solely in person. Some of them might do a hybrid of online and in person. So what do you do if a school does that? And what if they're a single parent, or a parent who works multiple jobs, and they need that kind of a care? What does that church group need? The last thing you need to, one of the other things that you need to add is, what is the intent of all the old and new ministry options? Are they still trying to fulfill the social center idea? Do they serve God? Does it serve the Great Commission? And these are really important questions, because the reality is, once we have done with this hybrid, we will find that in a lot of ways the social center is no longer the church, at least not for us. And so if that's the case, and our work has done that, then what is our intent? Maybe you do want your church to become, again, the social center, and maybe it is the place intentionally that you might have different work labs for children, so that they might be able to have like technology, and they bring their laptops and do work at school and do homework, because now they'll be back in community, but they might still have to be online some. Maybe, just maybe, you think about how to use the church every day, so that there's like kind of an everydayness, and people are able to just be able to work and to gather and to congregate in those things. What is the intent of all the old and new ministry options? And most importantly, do they all serve God in the community? Are we in all of these groups that we're thinking about? Make sure to think about where they came from, what they're doing. Do a demographic survey if you need to find out really, like, when's the last time you've done one? Do you really know the members? What about the new members? Where are they coming from, and what are they doing? If you don't have new members, why aren't they coming? What is it that those persons need? If you are a church that is a lot smaller and you're trying to refresh, is there a group of people in your community that is right around you that might need some sort of respite? So as soon as this opens up, you can be there for them. Maybe it's something that you can kind of think about. For example, I love to use, for example, everyone knows and has heard of Reverend Jamal Bryant, who's now the pastor of New Birth Baptist Church in Atlanta, but he's an AME pastor. And so the way that he actually built his church is that he realized in the Maryland, in the Baltimore, in the DC area, there are a lot of people going to jail. And in that time frame, a lot of people weren't supporting those persons in jail. And when they would come out, they didn't have support. And so he, as a minister, decided, I'm going to go to the jails and nurture people as they are in jail, and to see what it is that they need. When persons came out of jail, the church was there to welcome them and to do work with them. But not only did the church just bring them in to just as a member, the church said, you know what do you need? Do you need help getting housing? Do you need help getting a job? Do you need help doing this and that? And so once they became full members, and once they got back on their feet, then if they decided to stay with the church, and a lot of them did, which is how a lot of them actually, how some of the way that the church grew, then they became tithing members of the church and were able to pour back into the church that did some investment into them. But what does when we think about how we might invest in a community and how the community might serve God and how we might serve God in the community, is thinking about these kinds of things that we may have started to overlook because we're kind of comfortable with the people that we have in our church. But if we grow our churches, and the real way to grow our church is not necessarily to grow it quantitatively, but grow it qualitatively. So what I mean by that is not just saying, hey, let me look at the numbers in the church and what all the numbers are, but are we making a richness in this person's life? How are we trying to look at the church so that it might actually enrich the lives of those persons around us? And lastly, does it serve the Great Commission? We need to go back to look at what the Great Commission is and say, hey, is my goal is to go out and to make, to do the work of God and to make, to bring people in. And so if we're going out to do the work of God and to bring the people in, and to fulfill the word of God by going out and spreading the word, then what does that look like? What does it look like for us to really think about neighbors? And what does it look like for us to think about our neighbors as ourselves? What does it look like for us to do those sorts of things? Also, lastly, in assessing what is needed, what elements are necessary? So this is the hard part. So as we go through and think about the work that we have to do and go about and think about the things that we have to work on, one of the things that we're going to find out, and one of the things that we're going to see, is that not everything that we had before actually worked. And so if not everything that we had before actually worked, and not everything that we had before worked for the things that we're going to do, at least all the things won't actually mount up to the way that we have to do them next, then I think that we probably have to really do some other assessing. And it can be really hard because at this point we've already gone and we've already said to ourselves, hey, you know what? These things have happened in our lives. This work has been done already. These things have come about, and we like them, and we want to keep them, because why wouldn't we keep something that we know has worked so many years before, but it may not fit into the new work? And so what you have to do is you have to, have your own little ceremony and say, you know what, it's over, and I'm sorry that it's over, but let me do everything. Let me see how I can do some things a little differently so that I might be able to move forward in what God has for me to do, and by just kind of shedding a little bit of something that may not necessarily be serving us anymore. Now, that's hard. And I do think that there is a specific way that you can do that so that it's still a way that is affirming and encouraging to everybody, and affirming and encouraging to all the work that has to be done. So I'm sorry, I just realized that I had not, didn't still have my screen on, but I wanted to make sure, because I did not actually put in my PowerPoint the actual text of the Great Commission, which is Matthew 28, really 18 through 20. And Jesus said, and Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am always with you to the end of the age. But I'm going to tell you, you cannot go out and disciple any nations and baptize them if you do not get a chance to know them and what it is that they are needing and what they are wanting. And that's always going to be something that's there. But also, too, what I want to say is, if you get to a point where any of your elements are, as you deem them, are no longer necessary, I want you to think about the fact that you have to deal with the fact that we're now in a different kind of a hybrid world, and honor the decisions that people have made if in fact the thing no longer serves the church and what you're doing. Like I said, that's a little hard, but as I mentioned before, there are ways to do it and rituals around it that can allow you to say, hey, you know what, right now this doesn't work, and if at a point we need to do it again because things have increased for us in a certain kind of way, or if this need comes back around, then we can just retire it for a little bit, and we can always bring it back if we need to. So the next thing you need to do is develop a plan. So talk to your pastor. Do a SWOT analysis if you want to do a SMART goal SWOT analysis. Strength, weaknesses, obstacles, and oh gosh, I'm going to remember the team in just 1 second. Thank you all. See, you all get to have me in all the things that I remember and don't remember right now, and I can't be in live thing for us to even kind of work with. Oh, sorry. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I definitely notice on a regular basis, but I also bring this on pandemic brain and the things that I can and cannot retain in my mind at any time. So it's stress, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This doesn't work for everybody, but this is a possible idea, largely because with the SWOT analysis, it allows you to see if this is actually a manageable task. A lot of times we put together a plan or we talk to people and we think about a SWOT analysis and we think of all these things, but then we don't realize that it's not actually manageable for the group that we're working with. It's a great plan, but it's not going to work. So be willing to kind of do a SWOT analysis. The next thing is give yourself a timeline. What I mean by that. So with a timeline, you want to be able to, and even for the SWOT analysis, you want to make it measurable. You want to make this, and you can also do SMART goals. You want to do, so you can do a SWOT analysis. You also may want to do SMART goals. So SMART goals, of course, make it so that things are manageable and so that you can articulate them in the process and you can allow them to be something that allows you to get your work done. And so you can really kind of measure what those tasks are. And so, and I will pull those up too and tell you what they are in case anybody wants to use that. So the SWOT analysis, of course, helps you do some work in terms of analyzing what you're doing. And something like a SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based goals. So you want to give yourself a timeline. You want to make sure that they really work and they want to make sure that they do those other things. And I can include that information onto the email that I send to Dr. Harris, so that you can also study more of that if that's something that works for you. Note also too, and I didn't put this in here, in developing your plan, it may not all work for you. Very similar to what we talked about a second ago, since it may not all be relevant to you and it may not all work for what you're doing, the biggest thing to keep in mind is that it's okay to find something else. There are other things that do work and that you do want to kind of keep in mind to help you. The last thing is ask the groups that you assess if it will work for them. So make sure that you actually have a plan, that you've had people listen to, that you've had people roll with, that you've had people do other things with. Make sure that you have developed a plan that they can be on board with, because they are your major stakeholders. And so you never put anything new in place without talking to your major stakeholders. People who know business know this, people who do a lot of management know this as well. And so same kind of rules apply here. Just because it's church doesn't mean the same rules don't apply. The next thing is ask for help. I will tell you, I had to learn how to really ask people for help, especially as president. I mean, I cannot do it all by myself. You cannot do it all by yourself. So don't be worried about what people are going to think. We promise you're still amazing, but you can't do it all by yourself, nor should you want to. This is ministry. So ministry, if you can't go out and baptize and make disciples and do ministry, if in fact you aren't actually asking people to work with you, though, that kind of the idea of the Great Commission demands for you to look at an increase. And if you are looking at an increase and it demands you to look at an increase in working with people, you can't just say, oh, I got the people and don't use them. So understand that you have people who you can ask for help, and it's healthy to ask for help in the work that you're doing. Another thing I do want to say, and we never think about this when we are planning events and getting into the work that we're really doing, but give yourself some grace. One of the things that I've said many times, especially during the pandemic, especially as I'm working with Think Connection Young Adult Ministry, right now in particular, my wonderful administration has the privilege and the weight of serving a 5th year. No other board has ever had to serve a 5th year. So this is not something that is precedented. There's nothing written down, anything about it. Literally, there is nothing in this space that talks about how do we even go about a 5th year. And so there are some things that we just had to be like, you know what? We need to take some self-care so that we don't burn out completely. We need to recognize the fact that we needed some grace and recognize the fact that all of the work that we've done in the past 4 years and even in this next year, everything that we have to do won't get done overnight. And that is very important for us to remember and to realize that we have to give ourselves some grace. And it's okay if it doesn't all get done today. And it's okay if it takes some years to put into place. It is absolutely okay. But remember, if you have smaller goals that are attainable, and even if the timeline doesn't work out completely for you and the goal shifts some, give yourself some grace. Hopefully over the past year with the pandemic, that's something that you have really learned very well, is to be willing to give yourself some grace in this situation. So I've actually come to the end of what I want to talk about today. I do have a couple resources for you. Dr. Crutchfield's The Formation of a People, which I mentioned. Also, the Rainiers, they had the Essential Church, which you read some years ago. Go back to that text because there's some specific things in there outside of just the shock value of who's going to be here and what they're doing, that understanding what the church essentially means and what it means to have a church and what kind of ways we implement it. Also, Lakeisha Womack has this a workbook called Rethinking Church that strategizes church. And also too, so these are just some articles that have just kind of talked about remote learning, but how some people have thrived in that, some of the things that I talked about earlier. And lastly, these are some things about relationships. So now I know that this, we have been watching online, and I thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that this has been fruitful for you all. I will be available for questions, and I would love to hear what you have to say. But thank you so much, and I hope that as we can start to think about what the new normal looks like for us, that we can start to go into motions and thinking about what happens. And even if it's not necessarily developing a new plan, maybe it's just revamping an old one and seeing what really works for the work that we are doing in our denomination. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to have a conversation with you all. Bye.
Let's give both of our presenters a great round of applause. Amen. And take these earbuds out. We had some challenges with the audio, but from the comments in the chat, it seemed as if most people were able to hear well enough to glean what our presenter was sharing with us. And I hope that you see why we asked Reverend McIntyre to be a part of this opportunity today. She continues to prove herself as one who is a wonderful leader, who's passionate and insightful in regard to her work in the church. So those of you who might have questions, take this opportunity to engage her now. Reverend, you did such a great job. They don't.
Yeah.
That's Sister Winton. She has her hand up, and that's
like I'm in school.
Sister Hill. Go ahead, Sister Winton.
Thank you. I just want to say, Reverend McIntyre, you did an awesome job. Your presentation was very detailed, and you answered all my questions in your presentation because you were asking and you were detailing at the same time. So I hope that we get to share your presentation with others as well to get it in writing. But I just wanted you to know from everybody, I'm sure you did an awesome job. And thank you so much for your planning and your awesome work with the young adults and the entire CME Zion. Good job.
Thank you so much. And you will get a copy of the handout. And the handout actually does have I added the SWOT analysis chart and the SMART goals chart in there so you all can have it in your just kind of readily available with that particular document.
Sister Hill, did you have a question?
Thank you so much for your presentation. You laid out everything we need to do. We just need to put it into action. So thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else?
Yes, Reverend McIntyre, Harold Pettyway from Louisiana region. In your perspective, what do you see as the favorite model for young adults in the new normal?
Can you, and young adults in respect to, in respect to life or church, or what? And what are you specifically detailing?
Yes, in participation in the CME Church, and what is their ongoing way to best utilize them in the CME Church? What do young folks think is best for them?
Okay. I think it actually varies depending on the region and the district. I like to remind people that young adults are anywhere from the age of 18 to 35. And so you have some young adults who are just leaving high school and starting careers, and some young adults who have families and are married, and probably, if they had children younger, have young adult children. At least there's one member on my board who has, her daughter is a young adult as well. And so she has very different needs than her daughter does. I cannot give you a cookie cutter answer, because I think that it depends on where your region is. And it also depends on what the young adults in your area might specifically look for. If you have young adults, then they may be looking at support from the collegiate level and how the church can assist them while they are in college and while they are, and not just assist them in terms of eating, meals, because I do think that's part of it, and, pressing a little dollar on their hands. But when I was in undergrad, I had churches that would come and we would actually have fellowship, and we would get off campus and we would think about the other needs that we had. And I was very far away from home. I did my undergrad in Maine. So having a church family that really worked with me from the 18 to 25, the 18 to 21 range was very important. And I had specific needs. And so this was also the church family I started reaching out to when I, in addition to the like if I needed a smaller job in the city, this was a church family that would help me get a smaller job in the city and would help me to look for other different kinds of things to take care of myself. But those are some of the things that I needed at that point. I know for a fact that a lot of people graduating are probably really thinking about what their job life is going to look like, because there are so many jobs that did not make it through the pandemic and so many jobs that are cropping up. If you're a tech job, you're probably going to be okay. If you don't have a tech job, you may have some issues depending on which companies lasted and which ones did not. So even just encouraging people through their career search, and also even encouraging people to continue to move forward. There was a point in time when I was unemployed, and I was unemployed because literally everywhere I sent my resume in, and I sent my resume into hundreds of places, they just weren't accepting my resume. And my church family at the time, my pastor specifically, knew what was going on and would encourage me and remind me that things were okay, even though I was sending out these hundreds of resumes and either not getting responses or getting rejections for a particular job. And so that may be something to consider. Also too, remembering that young adults are adults. So if there are, and a lot of young adults are going through various life changes. So as people are getting married or partnering up and having children or deciding not to have children, or also working on their finances and trying to work on their credit score and having regular family life things, reminding people that they're okay wherever they are and that life changes are very important. Instead of worrying about, hey, I haven't seen you in the past month, calling them and saying, hey, do you need some help, or are you okay? Because I haven't seen you and I know that you are normally here. And it very much just makes a difference to be attentive. But the biggest thing is, those are some examples. The biggest thing that I would say is just being attentive to what their life is going on. More young adults are more in tune to the CME Church than we think. You will find out in about a couple months, and especially as some of these bishop elections start to come about, a lot of the people who are on some of those calls and some of those Zooms are not the elder folk in the church. A lot of them are young adults who are tuning into Zoom and are asking questions, and they're waiting because they know that those questions are going to come back around, and they are already invested. And also too, I will say this, and I know this is a longer answer, being encouraging people to understand that although we are a connectional church, if you want to stay invested just in your local church, that's fine. If you want to just stay invested in your region, that's fine. If you want to be invested in the connection, that's fine. But all of those experiences are equally important, and we have to celebrate them wherever they are and however they're willing to be a part of the denomination. I go to some local churches that have like 50 or 70 young adults that I've never seen on a connectional level. And I think that's also okay, because that means that church is doing something to help grow that particular group of people and just kind of honoring where everyone is. So I hope that answers the question, Tom.
Thank you so much. That was quite comprehensive, I thought. Let me take a moment and recognize my colleague, Dr. Leo Pinkett, the Secretary of Ministry to Men. I believe he hears me. I want him to take an opportunity to just greet us at this moment, if he would, please.
All I can say is, wow, once again, Cliff, you've stretched us this morning with these two talented individuals, Brother Chris out of the First Episcopal District, and my own daughter. That's one of my daughters there, soon to be Dr. Amina McIntyre. It makes me feel proud and let me know that the church is in good hands, and presently and in the future. But what has been poured out today has just been truly awesome, and is laid out in such a way that we'll be utilizing it across the connection. Before they publish it, we can get it free. So take full advantage of that information that was given today, because we'll see it once again, probably on Amazon. Thank you, Cliff, for the opportunity. And it's been a wonderful program. Let's keep moving forward always, laity.
All right, thank you so much. Anyone else?
Dr. Harris, Elton Wells has his hand up.
Okay.
Well, why don't you let me alone? Because he's going to need you for the night's over. Hello? And all the useful men
Hello.
on the other side.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hear you well.
Yes, my question is for, I say Dr. Amina, but Reverend Amina McIntyre, Elson Wells here from the Northeast Mississippi region, Young Adult Vice President and the Hot Spring Oxford District leader. My question is, do she have any word to, as we get prepared for our general conference, the words for the region to encourage young adults to support and try to attend to go as we get ready to elect our leaders for the future of our church, because we know the young adults have fought for a voice to be out there on the general conference floor, and I think it's very imperative, especially the 2022 conference that's coming up. What words of encouragement she may give to all laity and all pastors that might be listening?
Thanks. I try to mute so that so no background noise happens, and then inevitably it makes it a little harder for me to unmute. One of the things that I would suggest highly is is to try to become a delegate if you can. In my administration at the last general conference, about a third of the delegates were young adult, and that was because we actively talked to bishops. We started pushing for people to start talking to their bishops a little earlier, start talking to people in their areas about their wanting to be a delegate. And also too, we have a delegate training that we did, and it's actually still on YouTube, but we had a delegate training class for all first-time delegates. But the first thing would be to talk to your bishop about how you can become a delegate. Talk to your Board of Christian Education person, let people know that you have an interest. See if some of our wonderful persons who may have been to General Conference a little more, if they would be willing to work with you or be willing to offer you their spots. I know that's controversial to say, but the reality is there's some people who've been to like 10 or 12 general conferences, and they may need to make room for some of the younger persons to come about. And I don't think it's a problem to go ahead and say, hey, look, you know, it's time for a turnover, but to still remember to vote in the best interest of everyone. The General Conference isn't just about our personal endeavors, it is about the whole of the church. But there is a YouTube series that we did. If you go to our CME, I think it's CME, and I can send you the link to it, but we actually have an entire class on General Conference, including, it's from the previous discipline, so it won't have the 2018 discipline details, but definitely reading your discipline will also be a way of doing it. And if you have any other questions, contact us and we will happily, Thelma Princess Witter, who is the 4th District representative, is also someone who specifically looked into working with the General Conference class and preparing that living document for us. So I hope that helps. But just go ahead and you have to just go on in there and do it. And let people know that you're ready.
Okay, we had another hand up. I don't know who that person is. It says Zoom user.
Right.
I am Velma J. Duncan, a member of the Central Georgia Conference of the 6th Episcopal District. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a comment. I was late getting on and I couldn't get my name in. Well, I got on early, but I couldn't get my name in. So I've listened to you all. And I would simply like to say, relating to what Reverend McIntyre just got through saying, and we pray for that specifically in the Fort Valley Savannah district and all over, that God will allow more seasoned Christians or faith walkers to be willing to share time and experiences with young adults. There are young adults willing and eager to share their faith, and we should not make it a competition. There's plenty room for all kingdom builders. So more seasoned Christians can't assume that they just need to hold positions and that the church, the young people are the church for the future. They are the church of today as well. And there is, as the song says, plenty good room for all willing workers. So to all participants, congratulations, and to young adults, we will be working with you and not against you. This is not a competition between the young and the old, but this is a journey for all of us trying to make heaven our home, but in the meantime, helping each other here on earth.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Brother Elton Wells, if you hear me, would you please send me your contact information?
Yes, sir, I will. And I'll send it to you or through my regional lay leader, Brother Odie Power. We'll get in contact with you.
All right. Get that to me, please.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else have any questions? Comments? Well, as we draw to a close, I'm very thankful and grateful again for each of you taking the time to be a part of this opportunity. So we say young, gifted, Black, saved, CME. And anytime that we need someone to share with us, we don't always have to go outside of our denomination. And we don't always have to get individuals who are totally seasoned to share. So again, that will be other opportunities that we will look to be providing a platform for. And as we move through the rest of this quadrennial, keep in mind what both of these presenters shared with us. And remember that at one time we were young, believe it or not. And as we go through life, well, if we look back, we had some of the same notions, some of the same concerns. Times have changed. Opportunities have changed. So as we adjust, as we work together, again, sharing, studying, seeking, sharing, and serving together, let's always be of the mindset that we are more alike than we are different. And that if we keep our focus correct, and I believe somewhere in Reverend McIntyre's presentation, she mentioned relationships. During this pandemic, I'll say what I said. Let's go back as far as last summer. And it's proving out that we must guard our relationships. Relationships that you had before the pandemic, if they were fruitful, if they were meaningful, try not to lose those relationships, because they can be tested, because we don't see each other. We can't communicate with each other in person the way that we did before. And many times when there are concerns or problems between individuals, they can be remedied and solved just by being in one's presence. But because we don't see each other, there's a tendency not to communicate if a problem arises. So whether we're younger or whether we're older or in between, let's guard our relationships. So let me thank again what I call the A-team, Brother Hill, Sister Evans, and Sister Avis Hill, persons who help us with this venture, with bringing these opportunities to you. The presentations, with the permission of our presenters, will be available to you. You can contact Sister Avis Hill, and we'll put that information on the screen here in just a minute. Again, thanks, Ms. Dinah Winton, President of our Connectional Usher Ministry, for being present and being a participant today. Again, Dr. Leo Pinkett, a colleague in general officership, the General Secretary of Ministry to Men. Our chair has already, I believe, gone to another meeting in the persons of Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas. All of the lay leaders, Brother Moffitt, thank you for that prayer. Those of you who may contact Brother Reginald Williamson, he had to leave. Let him know, and I will follow up with him that we were grateful for his presence. And I'm always grateful for the presence of my wife, Ms. Jonetta Harris, who I tell folks that, you know, if you remember the old TV program years and years ago, there was a program, Reverend McIntyre, they called Queen for a Day. And the Queen for a Day competed against other ladies, and somebody ended up with the crown. Well, she's my queen every day, not just for a day. So I thank God for her presence and for her continued support. All of you who continue to make lay ministry and the work of the church relevant. I ask you continue to do that. Let's continue to work together. Keep your ears to the ground for what we'll be doing going forward. Be other collaborative efforts as we look to make the church better, make each other better, and to grow in Christ. Any other questions or comments before we close and provide the information that you need to get the presentations that were presented to us today? Brother Chris, do you have anything that you want to say to us before we part?
Yes, sir. Just again, thank you all for having me today. And I enjoy the fellowship and enjoy Reverend McIntyre's presentation. So I just appreciate you again for allowing me to present. And you know, in any way that I can be of help to anyone, just let me know, and I'm always willing to do so. Again, thank you.
Okay, Reverend McIntyre. Any parting words for us?
Yes, thank you again also for having me. Chris, thank you for such a wonderful presentation as well. And I just really appreciate being here. There is someone who does have a hand up. I'm not sure who that might be for, but it's a telephone number. So I just wanted to make sure we recognize that particular hand. It's a 936 phone number.
All righty.
And Dr. Harris, just an FYI, Bishop Thomas is still on.
Oh, is he? Okay, Bishop Thomas, would you give us, well, let me ask this. I would request, if you don't mind, to give us some parting words in just a minute and give us our closing prayer. In the meantime, can we put on the screen the information that we need for individuals to request the presentations that were presented to us today? That is the email address you can request. Ms. Avis Hill mans that email address, and if you make your request, she'll see that you get the presentation.
But Brother Harris, can I also add that for those that are interested, these all of our sessions have been recorded.
Yes.
And are currently available on the Department of Lay Ministry YouTube channel. And I'm going to put that up here in a second, if I can navigate to it. There it is. Can you see that?
It hasn't changed, Eric.
Oh, okay. I forgot you got to stop share and reshare again. I'm learning something new every time we do these. So this is the Department of Lay Ministry of the CME Church YouTube page. All of our previous sessions have been recorded and are available on that page. You can find this page by searching Lay Ministry CME, and it will take you to the page. We do ask that if you do view the videos, that you do hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers that we have to our YouTube page allows us to be able to rename the page. Once we get up to 100 subscribers, then we are able to rename the page as the Department of Lay Ministry, so it will be easier to find going forward. But these presentations today, as well as the previous presentations, all of it will be available on the Department of Lay Ministry YouTube channel that you can use to share with your other lay councils or other organizations within the church on the specific topics that have been presented throughout these series of virtual learning experiences.
All right, thank you so very much. All right, Bishop Marvin Frank Thomas, would you share some parting words and a prayer for us, please?
Thank you, Dr. Harris, Dr. Pickett, and to our great presenters, Brother Washington, Reverend McIntyre. Thank you both for excellent presentations, and thank the wonderful laypersons for your presence and for your participation in this webinar today. And certainly it is a watershed moment for us in the church as we were blessed by two very powerful and tremendous presentations by two of our outstanding young adults. I have this interesting set of tension with me. My grandson loves to call and on FaceTime, and so he's wanting me to hurry up so that I could get back to him. And so let me do what it is that I must do. And let me remind you, please support us in the CME Church and the lay ministry and the Bishop in the NAACP Bishop William H. Graves Memorial Membership Drive. We really need support. This is a great moment for us in our social activism and our engagement. So we certainly ask that you will join us in this effort between now and the end of May. God, we give thanks to you for this day. We thank you, God, for all the blessings that you have blessed us with. We thank you for Dr. Harris and for his leadership. We thank you for Brother Washington, Reverend McIntyre. We thank you for their gifts and for their graces and for their willingness to share with us this day. We pray for this church as the laypersons have gathered in their receptivity to these presentations today. May the church be better because we've shared this moment together. Now, my brothers and sisters, I charge you, go now in peace, but be restless in your peace until justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
Amen.
Go in peace, but be restless in your peace
Yes.
until there are no events and no events like happened in Atlanta just a few days ago.
Yes.
Go in peace, but be restless in your peace until peace is non-negotiable. God bless you and God keep you. Go forth.